I know that you think you could run your favourite cricket team better than those who do, but no one is going to let you do that. So why not try Wicket Cricket Manager to satisfy that urge? Pick your nation, pick your league, pick your players, and yell at them when they do poorly. You can find it in the links below or by searching for Wicket Cricket Manager in your App Store today. If you're enjoying these live chats, our main channel has even more World Cup videos looking at the greatest performances, the quirkiest stats, and the epic tales of World Cup cricket. Cricket is about partnerships, and this show was made in partnership with HCLTech. Yeah, the company you see on the Australian shirts. Supercharge your technology with them today. Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Scoreboard. What the hell is that? I'm going to try and recap this game, but I make no apologies for the fact that this is all going to be nonsense. Because basically, South Africa did exactly what they wanted to do. They won the toss, they batted first, and it's like at no stage they looked up at the Kolkata clouds and went, I wonder if this will affect things at all. Apparently, the Bengali clouds coming in meant that it was Mitchell Stark of 2019 again. Absolutely remarkable. Then QDK played, I don't want to say the stupidest shot ever, because that's being unfair to the many, many stupid shots that have been played by cricketers in the world. But, you know, it's in the conversation. Eventually, Hazelwood was just all on top of South Africa as well as they fell apart. And then you had Klaasen and Miller playing a magnificent partnership, right? The kind of partnership that actually not only pulled South Africa back in the game, but you thought if they get 230 on this wicket, and with these two, they could get even more than that, they were in a real chance of winning the game. And then what happens then? Something weird, something unexpected. Australia give the ball to Travis Head, despite the fact that Glenn Maxwell was out there. They went, no, we're gonna give another part-timer a chance here. And Travis Head bowls a lifetime in 1 over. Right? The first couple of balls, putrid. A dot ball, and then he's on a hat trick, including bowling Klaasen out. When Klaasen wasn't even attacking him, he was defending him. And then it was only Miller left. And Miller plays an incredible innings. But unfortunately for Miller, he is quite literally batting on his own for long periods of time there. And it means that Australia have to chase 213. Now, I don't know how old you are. I don't know what your background is. I don't know how many cricket books you study or how long you spend on Rue Belinda's channel. But that's a pretty magical number in Australia-South Africa semi-final World Cup history. Because in 2019, 213 was the score that, well, both teams made in that particular game. And so suddenly you have that. And weirdly enough, this game actually then starts to even follow that pattern. For instance, in the chase, the openers come out and they smash it everywhere. Warner and Head are just all over South Africa at the start of this chase. And suddenly I made a tweet about Australia. Well, South Africa might have to bring on Shane Warne to bowl, right? And they did. They brought on Aiden Markram, who not only took a wicket straight away, but acted with just the same amount of aggression and nonsense as Shane Warne did all those many years ago. Just absolutely remarkable. And then South Africa dropped and missed and had half chances for a little while, but couldn't quite get into the game. And then eventually you found Marnus and Smith at the crease, who decided to bat for South Africa, from what I could tell, put no pressure back on the bowling team, allowed the bowling team, especially the spinners, to just put the ball where they want, keep the pressure on as much as possible. There was a silly point at one stage. Why are you allowing a silly point? Hit the silly point out of there. Maxwell comes in. I don't know what the opposite of the Afghanistan innings is, but we saw something quite similar from him. Smith is now batting with Inglis. Inglis looks incredible, and it was Smith who maybe didn't quite look on the level of Inglis there for a little while. And then Smith, I don't want to put his shot in the same level as QDK, but why was he pulling that ball? What did he see that the rest of us did not? What a bizarre shot. And now Inglis, who probably was lucky to stay in the side considering how he'd been playing and their rash decision with Alex Carey at the start of the series. Suddenly Inglis is out there and he looks like the calm one and he's guiding Australia home. And then Gerald Coetzee goes through him and you're left with Stark and Cummins, who decide to crawl to victory. but they crawl so slow that they actually somehow make it a game where you start to think they might run out of time here. And after all of that, Australia ended the chase with all the aplomb of an alcoholic steering a cruise liner through a hurricane. It was dreadful and exhilarating. And I don't know if it was an instant classic or the messiest schoolyard fight between two 5-year-olds I have ever seen. And from South Africa, was this not the anti-choke after giving up the total that wasn't that high? They did everything within their power to get as close as possible to actually winning this game. And were Australia the ones actually choking, despite the fact they somehow managed to win this game after being 24 for 4, and they won it with a couple of balls left, well, a couple of overs left, and a couple of wickets left. What a truly remarkably stupid World Cup semi-final this was. I loved every minute of it. All right, let us check the tape. And I cannot believe I'm saying this, but we are going to start with Travis Head, the bowler. Because, I mean, Travis Head is not a bowler, and yet his bowling probably outside of the early spell, and we'll cover that later, of Hazelwood and Stark, but probably had the most impact on this game because Klaasen and Miller were doing absolutely great. This is the amount of overs he's bowled so far. So you can see that he's had the ball occasionally, right? And I think in some ways he's a nice complementary off spinner to Glenn Maxwell because Glenn Maxwell is a defensive spinner. And Travis Head does get the ball up there and he does rip it. And we saw him really spinning some balls today, right? But it was incredible that he was bowled today. And it was in part, let's be honest, because Zampa wasn't bowling particularly well. Part of that was matchup. You know, Klaasen loves playing against Zampa. And, you know, Miller being the left-hander also went against him. But there, at no stage, well, put it this way, 2 balls into his spell, I thought it was perhaps the biggest mistake Pat Cummins had ever made. And in the end, it was probably I think when, and we'll talk about the partnership later, but I really think that Klaasen Miller was the hinge point of the entire game. Thinking back to Head getting those 2 wickets, but certainly the first one was the difference between what looks like now South Africa surely scoring way too many runs that Australia would not have been able to chase. So remarkable. This is his ODI bowling record. So you can see he averages in the 50s. I think that's a little bit unfair. I kind of like Travis Head as a decent part-timer. I think, you know, he gets through his action quite well, but he does struggle, as we saw at the start of his spell, sometimes controlling his length. The ball gets away from him a little bit. You can see, you know, again, going at not quite a runner ball, but not too far off a runner ball here as well. You know, certainly a very part-timer, especially when you've got a second part-time spinner in your team. This is the amount of overs he's bowled by years in ODIs. So you can see that when he first came into the team, and Australian fans will remember this, of course, he actually bowled quite a lot. And I can't remember if that was because Maxwell was not in or injured at that time, but I remember always thinking that there was something about his bowling, you know, that he could get the ball through and can give it a bit of turn as well. And you can see that in 2022 he wasn't used much, and he's still only 30 overs this year. Although some of that will be, of course, he wasn't always in the side because of injuries as well. But one reason that he was used today was finger spin. This is Australia's bowling today, finger spin versus wrist spin. Now, remember, the wrist spinner is Adam Zampa. The finger spinners, Travis Head and Glenn Maxwell. But you can see here that Zampa didn't actually take a wicket today with his bowling, going for 55 runs. And you can see that finger spin averaged 28. I did think the Shamsi bowled really well, so I don't think it was necessarily not a wicket for wrist spin. I think the ball just didn't come out of Zampa's hands exactly as he wanted to. He struggled a little bit with his length. And then on top of that, I think it was that matchup that sort of got to his head a little bit. But this is the remarkable one. You know, this runs per over. The difference between the two here is just absolutely massive. So you can certainly see just why they decided to go with Head. And to be fair, as I said, it looked like it was going to be a horrible mistake. Suddenly, Head was on a hat trick. You know, we were in the Cricket 8 studios just laughing at the ridiculousness of it. If you think about South Africa South Africa won the toss and managed to have 2 different collapses in this innings. And if you told them the first one was the Stark and Hazelwood, they'd probably be like, oh, it's Stark and Hazelwood. If you told them the second one was with Head, they might have looked at you slightly shocked before the start of the game. All right, let's move on to a little bit of about that first collapse, the South Africa's collapse. This is a little bit about South Africa and Australia all combined here. This is South Africa's average power play score in the World Cup. So between the World Cup, so they've been at 49 runs at the end of those 10 overs. We know that they play conservative. This sort of fits into that mantra. You then have them in the World Cup group stage. They were averaging 47 at the end of the 10 overs. Again, considering Bavuma went out quite cheaply and Riley Rousseau had to come in and everything else, at times, I think this is fine. But this is largely carried by QDK, of course, which is fine. This is what they managed today. And to be honest, I think they were lucky to score 18 runs today. It was remarkable how much Australia were all over them there. And part of this, of course, was those conditions that we talked about earlier. The ball was properly swinging, which gives Stark such a big advantage. And then it was wobbling around for Hazelwood as well. They also got the 2 bites of the cherry even a little bit later. I know that's not quite the power play data, but again, all these things certainly play a part. But it's still remarkable to me that South Africa did exactly what they wanted and somehow ended up with 18 runs from the power play, not to mention all the wickets as well, right? But we also have, this is the power play record at Eden Gardens for the group stage. So you've got the green is the first innings, the yellow is the second innings. So in the first innings, people have been averaging 41 with the bat in that first power play. That's per wicket. So I don't know what South Africa's final number was. I can't remember what they were at the end of the 10th over, but minus is probably what their average was, right? Remarkable, right? And the interesting thing, of course, is if you think about everything that happened today, it's you've got bowling in the first innings has always been tough at Eden Gardens in this World Cup. Batting in the second innings is also very tough at Eden Gardens, right? Then you add in the South Africa factor. They did absolutely nothing wrong. They made the absolutely right decision for them and everything else. The problem was that the clouds came in and just completely messed up everything and meant that Australia were completely on top. But you could see that going at just over a run a ball in the power play so far in that first innings. And you can see, again, just a huge drop in the second innings. So the South Africa did not make any mistakes when it came to the toss or choosing to bat. It suited them as a team. It suited the pitch conditions. Everything we knew about Eden Gardens was flipped when the clouds would go away early on. It's a remarkable thing that these things can happen so much. Obviously, Bavuma got a good one early on. That's fine. These things happen openers. We'll talk about him later on and his tournament. But I want to focus on Quinton de Kock's shot because, my God. Oh, that's the overall record. Yeah, the other one was the power play. Sorry, I forgot that we had both of them here. So you could see South Africa decided to bat first. All of this makes sense, and it just did not go to plan. This is Quinton de Kock's shot. This is the best still shot I could see, and by that I mean one of the worst still shots I could see. I just want to go all the way through here. This is the wrong ball, the wrong bowler, the wrong shot, the wrong execution. So I want to go through all of that for you very quickly here. Why is it the wrong ball? It was too short to be playing this kind of shot too. Why is it the wrong bowler? Because Josh Hazelwood is incredibly tall. I think there are ways to attack him. I don't think just randomly trying to play an on the up drive off a back of a length ball is the most ideal way to go about that. And I don't think slogging in general is a good choice. I also don't think it fits South Africa's game plan or anything else. But certainly against a tall player, you're always a chance of hitting it straight up in the air. But the other thing I want you to focus on here is his right foot. Well, now that the things come up, you're just going to have to look at his right foot on your own, everyone. See how close I can get. Oh, sneaky. I'll leave that up here. You can see that his foot is on a slight angle here. So on top of picking the wrong ball, attacking the wrong bowler, playing the wrong shot, you've also got an execution error here. He's not got the right balance. I think he decided very early on that he was going to try and hit this ball as hard as possible. When it came out, it wasn't the right ball. He wasn't playing the right shot. Perhaps if he tried to whip this across the line or back away and slash it through point, I think those are safer options. all those shots would have been hard off this particular ball, but trying to muscle it down the ground with a semi-straight bat is just so dangerous, absolutely horrendous. But I do want to mitigate his error just slightly here by looking at, this is Hazelwood's length. This was, I don't have the scorecard, the score, but this is quite early on, right? Oh, wrong one here. Right. So Hazelwood is in the blue, Stark is in the pink. So you can see Stark, he's got some, this is him trying to get some swing. You've got the short balls here. He sprays it around. I don't know if this is bowling. Hopefully these are around the wicket as well. I'm not sure. But I want you to focus on here. All right. Look at all the blue dots in here. And there was a point at which Hazelwood, I think I'm going to go right there. Hazelwood bowled a bunch of deliveries over and over again that essentially hit the exact same length. I would say probably around 6 meters, 90 centimeters, just making that up off the top of my head. But about 690 would be my guess. And he hit it about 7 in a row. He got the ball to move both directions. He got extra bounce because this pitch had extra bounce all day. Another reason why Quinton's shot wasn't particularly ideal. It was an absolute masterclass. And that grouping that he had when he was trying to hit that one particular spot was about as, you can see just how many balls there are in that area. That is about as accurate as you would expect a spinner to be. For a fast bowler to be able to do that is just absolutely incredible. So the pressure he put on South Africa was immense. That said, they're not a fast scoring side in the power play, and there was no reason to play that riskier shot at that situation in the game. And so I definitely think there's no way Quinton, if that's the last thing he does for South Africa in a one-day game, I don't think he's the sort of person that would dwell on these things, but he probably doesn't want to be shown it either, does he? All right, what have we got next? Let's talk about David Miller. Cheyenne's been having a look at whether he has a case to be an all-time great ODI batter. I always found him a really interesting player, partly because he was unfairly judged compared to AB de Villiers. Then I think he comes out of AB's shadow and doesn't quite step up to the way that we all thought he could. Then when he starts to get really good, suddenly Rassie's making runs, Aiden Markram's making runs, Quinton de Kock is still around. And again, Miller gets overlooked, especially at this World Cup at times. I think if you've been on my channel, I've rated him for a very long time, and I'm a very big fan. I'm very glad that he's finally got to his full potential. This is the highest scores for South Africa in a World Cup knockout game. Now, this is a sad list, but it does tell you a lot. And, Klusener's probably not too far off being off this list, despite batting at whatever it was, number 8 or number 9. But this is a big deal. They just haven't managed to get batters to bat long. They only needed one other batter to stay with him. Klaasen defending Travis Head, I know it was a good ball, but defending Travis Head and getting bowled just absolutely killed them. But what a great effort from Miller this was. But I just want to show how good he was in the cycle compared to how good he's been in the World Cup. He's averaged 40 in the World Cup. He's been a little bit disappointing. Remember, some of his average is a little bit lower just because he's come in such good positions and he's tried to slog almost straight away. This is what he averaged between the 2 World Cups, though. 60. That's 6 and a 0. 0.7. So you could say 61. If you want to round up, you can. If you want to round it to the middle and have a 60.5, I'm still okay with that. But you can just see what a beast he has been, and scoring at well over a run of ball there. You could see, scoring 68 runs for every 60 balls he faces. And in this World Cup, still over a run of ball. I think, he could have put this number up, but because so many, the innings today probably slowed him down a little bit. At one stage, I actually thought he was going to not go to full Maxwell, but I did think he was going to counterattack. But in the end, he picked his balls really, really well. I thought he was really clever. In fact, I think we've got something on that. This is his strike rate versus pace and spin today. So we know he has been dominating spin, but today, especially the finger spinners, spinning the ball away from him, he had to be a little bit more circumspect. But considering he's managed to make 100 at a strike rate over 80 in a game where everyone else made batting look impossible, just tells you what a quality innings this was. And this is it by bowler. So you can see here, not a particularly high strike rate against Maxwell. Blocked out Stark. Some of that might have been towards the end, of course. Also, there was some reverse swing going on. So I'm not as interested about that. Played Hazelwood about as good as anyone, just at the point when the ball was probably moving a little bit less for Hazelwood. But I like this off Stark. But the Zampa batting for me is the absolute treat, and I thought he was fantastic. And I just want to show, they put this up on the screen. So essentially what he was doing is, this is the slog sweep, and over here is the flick over mid-on. And what he did here, there was also, I think might have been a couple of pull shots in there as well. But basically what he did was, if the ball was over pitched, he would just flick it over long on for 6 and just use these incredible power. And when it was short, he would either try and pull it, and then occasionally he would force a ball by sweeping it, which has been a huge advantage to him, and one of the reasons why he started dominating spin so much of recent times. But what I thought he was particularly good against Zampa for was the ability for him to play on length. And I think this is another strength he has had against spinners of recent times. I think traditionally he would attack spinners because he's an attacking player. And what he does now is he waits for a ball to be in one of his arcs. And when he attacks, he can hit it for 6. But he doesn't always have to attack, right? And he's very changed and a lot different. But I just think he's a beautiful player of spin now in a way that he just never was before. And he's kind of the story of our next section as well. This is what I think. I think this is the most important part of the game. I think if you go back on the main channel about a year ago, I made a piece about the South African middle order being superheroes. And what I was saying is, and probably the top 6 as well, but what I was basically saying is all these players were fully maximizing the amount of runs they were making, a little bit like what India is doing now, but all from their top 6. And it was happening all the time. And it had to happen because in some games they didn't have a number 7 at all. And obviously that is a huge problem for a one-day team to almost have that position void at times. They I think in some ways had a slight upgrade in Marco Jansen, even though he's not fully developed. He can, because of the way he can score, he can put teams off. And he's got a fairly good defense when it is needed as well. But at times they had even worse number 7s available to them. So this is very crucial for them. This is this cycle, so 2019 to 2023. This is the 5th wicket partnership. Look at their 5th wicket partnership, which averages 57. It is almost 8 runs. Almost 8 runs more than the next best. And if you look here in the middle, everyone else is around the 40 mark, like even India, right? Everyone else is around that 40 mark. And yet South Africa is about 17 runs higher than what you would say the sort of the average is for a lot of these teams. But look what their strike rate is. India scoring over a run a ball for those 5th wicket partnerships. South Africa not far behind, and yet scoring at this obscene rate. Their ability to lose 4 wickets and then score at this rate has allowed them to win so many games over and over again. And my theory was that eventually that would fall apart. It did not fall apart today. They had another fantastic partnership today. I just want to show how much it changed for the World Cup. India is now suddenly up here for the World Cup. They're going at more than a run a ball with an average of 100, which is fine. They've been batting sensationally. Lots of set batters out there as well. Yes, this is for the 5th wicket. Oh, I've lost my little graphic. This is 5th wicket in this World Cup, right? But look at South Africa here. They're still averaging over 40, but they've upped their rate. So they have played that position just a little bit different in this World Cup. But the reason I mention all this, of course, is that that wicket of Klaasen was so big because I think that the way that I was looking at it, when we were talking about it on Cricket 8, I was saying that if this partnership stays in, it is very possible for Klaasen and Miller, the way they bat, to be able to get a 260 to 280 score. And I didn't think Australia was going to be able to chase that under lights at Eden Gardens, the pressure of the World Cup. And I also don't think Australia is a particularly great chasing side either. But I think they were about 104 at this point. And I also said that there was a very big chance that if they lost the wicket there, that 200 wasn't even going to be possible for them to get up to. Miller was the reason that they ended up making all those runs. But absolutely, a fantastic effort there. And the reason I say this is I just want to show the difference between the two sides when it comes to the number 7s, right? Forget averages. Neither of these players have played a lot of ODI cricket here. This is pro runs. Sorry, forgot to write runs up here. This is pro runs. Inglis is a backup batter in this squad, right? Okay, he's a wicketkeeper as well, and obviously he's come in as a wicketkeeper, but he was here as a spin expert to come in the World Cup. Alex Carey didn't look like he was going to make any runs against spin. Probably tossed away a little bit too soon, but either way. And Inglis comes in. Marco Janssen. Oh, and Inglis is 28 and has, what is that? Over 6,000 professional runs, right? In cricket so far. Marco Janssen is a 23-year-old bowler who can bat a little bit at the moment. He might develop into an all-rounder. He's probably not quite there at the moment, but he's certainly got the potential to be that. But he hasn't played a lot of cricket. And crucially, he hasn't batted a lot in professional cricket yet, despite the fact that he's now played a lot of games and everywhere else. And this is the flaw within South Africa's system, right? And Janssen is perfect to come in around that 38 over to 42 over mark and swing the ball around, maybe get some lucky ones away, but also hit some big hits. He's hard to bowl to because of his height and everything else. But when it's early and you've lost wickets, you want an English type player, a proper batter who can hit the ball around, right? There's a huge difference between these two players in terms of experience, also in terms of just skill level, right? With the bat. Inglis can play up and down. Marco Janssen can kind of block and kind of hit, but he doesn't have that middle gear that you might need on a pitch like this. It didn't matter today because he faced one ball, but I'm not pointing it out to talk about it today. I'm more talking about in general. Then what do you have after Janssen, right? You have Coetzee and you have Maharaj. Coetzee's list day average is about 17, certainly not an all-rounder. And then you've got Maharaj, who's a very handy number 8, number 9 who can chip it around, but obviously, more of an insurance batter than anything else. What does Australia have behind Inglis? They have Cummins, who is capable of very good things with the bat, and they have Stark, right? Again, capable of very good things with that. Both of those players are better than Maharaj and Coetzee, and they're also coming behind another batter. The weird thing about all this, and part of the reason I mention it is, when I made that video about the top order and about the fact that they don't lose a wicket after the fourth wicket and all these different things that I talked about with South Africa, my theory was if it was going to hurt them in this World Cup, it would be in the chase, in a knockout game. Just because the pressure of batting in a knockout game and a chase combined for South Africa would mean that how do they play these, what was it? Or is it here? How did they play this near runner ball, average of 60 kind of partnerships? And what is remarkable about what has happened, of course, is they batted first. They got what they wanted. And yet the pressure still got to them. The pitch was a little bit tricky. And then, to be fair to Heinrich Klaassen as well, it was just a bit of a freak ball from a bowler he didn't expect to be facing. And that opened up one end. And that was kind of the difference between them. But one way or another, and this is why I talk about flaws in all these teams. It's why I talked about New Zealand having a flaw of the fifth bowler. It's why I talked about South Africa having a weak number 7. All these sorts of things that we talk about, England not having the death bowling and Pakistan not being able to take wickets in the middle with their spinners. All these different things is because these are the games you expect them to come out in, right? Because you are playing the best team. Everyone's under pressure. All the things that your team has managed to overachieve doing, chances are will fracture a little bit under pressure. Look at India's bowling in yesterday's game. Even though they were defending virtually an impenetrable score, the pressure got to them. These games are when the tiniest cracks can shine light. And the number 7 position, as well as Janssen has batted at times in this World Cup, was more than a tiny crack, right? It's really, really interesting. Anyway, let's get on to something that I do find fascinating. Temba Bavuma. You have to see these stats. This is why when people were saying Temba shouldn't play, this is what Temba was like in the World Cup coming into this. Not World Cup, in the World Cup cycle. So from 2019 to 2013, you can see there that he was averaging over 50. I saw some of these games live. I saw some of these games on TV. He looked fantastic. Looked like he was born for ODI cricket. His ability to score, rotate strike, put pressure back with running between wickets, all those sorts of things, really well suited to ODIs. I would say of the 3 formats, he's a tier 1 ODI batter, a tier 2 a test match batter, and a tier 9 T20 batter, right? This is how he's gone this World Cup. It's been horrible, right? And I know injury has obviously played a part, and I will get to the injury as well in a moment, but he's really, really been bad. But this is his strike rate in that cycle. So you can see not quite at run a ball, but that high 80s, low 90s, which is kind of where you expect Bavuma. And also the way that South Africa bat, it's probably the ideal opener you want with Quinton de Kock, someone who can make runs, run between the wicket quite well, because Quinton's quite quick also, and rotate strike, get Quinton back on strike when he wants to be there. A decent player of all different kinds of bowling. But not only has he not made any runs in this tournament, he's quite often got stuck as well, which has put more pressure on Quinton de Kock. It hasn't mattered until today. But to be fair, today he didn't really get stuck at Temba. He was out very soon. But that is not particularly good. Let's have a look at his entire World Cup. Oh, no, sorry. This isn't his entire World Cup. This is all of his ODI scores this year, right? 100, 100, good score, 100, decent knock, right? That's all. It's so plain there. You've got one abject failure, and then you've got another abject failure over here. But he was giving them starts, which meant that they weren't losing wickets, which is exactly how their batting order is designed. What do you want me to say about the World Cup? And like some of these wickets were, really, really handy for batting as well. And there's some big totals that his team has made. He hasn't been particularly good when they bat first. He hasn't been particularly good when they bat second. This is something interesting, though, that we did find. Cheyenne found this out. This is his batting average at home versus batting average away. I very rarely would look at this, and I would say of a player like Temba that this is probably more of a fluke stat than anything else. But it's also there. It's worth having a look at. Here's the thing I really want to talk about with Temba, though. It was clear that he was going to play no matter what. And I don't know if there was, politics behind that. I don't know if there was, they just wanted the captain to be in the side. They didn't want Markram to come in. Whatever the case may be. I don't know. I just don't know why they did that. But he was a bit of a liability in the field because he's injured. There was a ball that was hit in his direction that he could have caught early on to put more pressure on Australia, and he was just short of it. I can tell you what, Temba Bavuma, one of the best moving fielders I've ever seen, catches that if he's fully fit. I think a replacement fielder in that same position probably catches that. It's very hard in one-day cricket, especially, to nurse injured players out in the field. Did that cost them the game? I don't know, right? But Temba was in magnificent form coming into this World Cup, and he's been in dire form in this World Cup. All these things are true. And then the last thing I want to talk about, which I thought was quite cool, is, and I'm trying to think if I've mentioned it before. I think I might have mentioned it on one of the earlier shows. I talked about how South Africa have that week number 7. But the other weird kink about their ODI team is that they only bowl frontline bowlers. And look, India's a bit like that, but India also had a lineup where they had Shardul and Hardik at one stage, so they had 6 bowlers available to them. Australia and New Zealand have all these different bowling options. England, probably another team with lots of different bowling options. Everyone's different, right? But this is after today. I should have done it before today, really. This is the amount of overs that have been bowled by non-frontliners in the South African system so far. So basically, Markram, I think he's bowled 12 overs in this tournament as their 6th bowler combined. That's an incredibly low mark for 10 games. Generally, you would have maybe a bowler get injured, maybe someone get hit out of the attack occasionally. They haven't managed to do that. And so for Markram to come in pretty cold and bowl the way he did. Now, there was a lot of reasons why. Obviously, if you're playing against Australia and you're bowling in the power play, if you've got a part-time off spinner, it is always worth bowling them because, you might know, if you do have a frontline off spinner, you might want to save them for later. But a part-time off spinner before the Australian batters are set, spinning the ball away from their 2 left-handers, a very, very good option. And then also, as we saw today, the ball was spinning at times as well. I thought it was a really, really good one, and it didn't quite work, the Markram gambit. And these are the sorts of things that won't be remembered. But they were getting hit out of the attack. And it's a risky, if you think about your best seam bowlers are getting absolutely smashed everywhere, for you to turn to a part-timer who's barely bowled in the tournament so far against Warner and Head, who both have the ability to score at 20, 25 runs off a bad over from a part-timer. That is actually a great move. And it set them up to, because that partnership, if it wasn't broken, we would be talking about this game very, very differently. Anyway, that's it for me and the scoreboard today. If you want to ask questions, as so many of you I am sure do, the best way to do it, as always, is super chat, as they just automatically come into my feed. But if you have any other questions, please put them up. We'll have a quick break here, and then after the break, I'll get to a few of your questions. I'm Jared Kimber. This is the Scoreboard.
Have you ever wondered how I watch so much cricket? I use VPNs to log into accounts from all around the world. But because before, even simple things like when something exciting would happen in a match, I would rush over to social media, and when I got there, the clips would say something along the lines of, "This video is not available in your area." In fact, most of the coolest cricket stuff in the world at the moment is geo-blocked because some random board didn't sign a deal where you happen to live. If you're a hardcore cricket nerd, the only way is to have a VPN, and we suggest Surfshark. They will give you the speed of your favorite quick bowler. They're as inventive as a T20 batter after a bunch of dot balls, and they're as secure as a specialist wicketkeeper with the softest hands in the world. And guess what? The kind folks at Surfshark are going to give you a deal. Enter the promo code Kimber for an extra 3 months free at surfshark.deals/Kimber. There are probably other things that Surfshark can help you with, like data and identity theft and traceability and intrusive advertising. But for us, it is our best weapon against the evil cricket geoblock. Go to Surfshark and type my name in KIMBER and get 3 months free today.
All right, welcome back. And we have Prathamesh, who says India never lost an ODI World Cup knockout game batting first. 6-match streak now. They lost 5 out of 8 chasing. Is sample size too small or some meaningful conclusion? I wouldn't make any sample size issues for India, but I would be interested. I think I've already proven that it's harder to chase at World Cups than anywhere else. My guess is it would be even harder to chase in a World Cup knockout games than anything else. I haven't looked at that. It might be something I look at before the final, but I think it's a really interesting one. Sukant says, does Maharaj have a Rashid-like thing for not coming on until the 15th? Seems inexplicable captaincy from Bavuma to have the number one bowler in the world and not giving the ball. No, I think part of the reason they did that, Sukant, was because he used Shamsi earlier. And it also probably had something to do with head. I know Maharaj eventually got head out, but in the power play especially, bowling to head or to Warner, there was probably a bit of a problem there. They were thinking of spinning the ball away from head. He's got such a weakness when the ball spins away. It's worth making that. But you make those choices. It's weird to say not bowling Maharaj was a massive flaw when he bowled Markram, and that was actually what started it, right? So you can't have it both ways. You could have easily brought Maharaj on earlier if they wanted to, but they probably picked the right bowler at the right time. DM says, throughout this tournament, Mark Chapman scored 84 from 71 and didn't bowl. Was he ultimately a luxury New Zealand couldn't afford compared to a fifth specialist bowler with Santner at 7 and Neesham offering 3 or 4 overs? Didn't Neesham also get smashed around as well? I just think they think that Chapman offers more with the bat. He never really got going, but he had a couple of innings where he was okay. I just think it's not that they think Chapman is... I think they think Chapman can do what Neesham does, but also gives them more flexibility in the case of something going wrong, would be my guess. My memory, I wouldn't have bowled Neesham much in this tournament. And the one time I remember him bowling, he went for runs. I still think Chapman probably should have bowled ahead of Ravindra occasionally, at least in the same way that Head sometimes bowled, Head bowled today ahead of Maxwell. It's just a different kind of left arm finger spinner, but they didn't quite feel the same way. DM says, we know wicket off the first ball and the final ball aren't of equal value. Will this ever be reflected in mainstream stats? Favorite part of your analysis is examining player impact relative to their role. I do think, certainly one-day cricket and T20 cricket, we should be able to work that out quite easily. I think stats are a lot smarter in TV. I actually think in this World Cup, there's been heaps of great information. And we've used some of the information, some of the stuff commentators said, occasionally graphics on it, because I think they've done quite well. So we are moving towards that sort of stuff. You cannot have stats in limited overs cricket without a degree of context to them. We couldn't quite get all of our context-laden stats ready for this World Cup. We're hoping by the IPL that we will have, we had some for the last IPL, but we'd like to have a revolving system that just automatically updates and we can look at players' contextual stats at any stage. I think that would be absolutely fantastic going ahead. So that's something that we're looking at doing. And I think more people like me do stuff like that, the more chance there is that that's the way that cricket will go. Miko says, Well, I don't. I think this is in the middle of a thread, and obviously I didn't star all of them. But he was talking about the mental aspect to these defeats. It's interesting you say that, because if you look at what happened today, Miko, they were 24 for 4 and fought back enough to put runs on the board to give themselves a chance of winning. The Klaassen wicket was a touch of fluke. And I don't want to downplay what Travis Head did, but he had bowled some shit before then, and was bowling to a guy who's pretty good against playing spin, and it spun sideways. And then they took the game as deep as possible. So what part of the mental aspect do you think actually played a part? I think you might have mentioned in one of your other messages, catches, right? A catch is a reflex thing, really, unless it's a skyer. Skyers are the ones, like, so if you look at the Klaassen drop at slip, if you watch his footwork, you can see exactly why he drops that. It isn't a case of choking, right? He sees the shot that's going to be played, and he thinks it's going to be a wide guide that he might be able to intercept and catch from the outside part of the bat. So he leans to his left. It ends up being quite a thin edge that goes to his right. He's moving it to the left. The ball goes to his right. His head's not staying. He's lost his balance by that point, and he drops it. That's not choking, right? Riley Hendricks is on the boundary, gets one low, probably just got his body in the wrong position. Riley Hendricks? Reza Hendricks. I think I quoted Riley Hendricks twice on this show. Oh, that's another mental worm I'm never going to get out. Great. I think he got his body wrong for that one. He kind of dived up for a catch I don't think he needed to, and again was in midair. I think you only should be in midair for catches that you have to. But how do you compare that to Rassie's catch, right? I thought they did great to keep pressure on Australia when Australia shouldn't have been under pressure at times. Some of Temba's captaincy, the fielding placements, I would have brought an extra player into the ring. He went with the extra catcher. Kind of a slightly different thing, but it's all about the pressure that you're putting on the opposition. Mama Saab says, hey, Jared, do you actively or passively cheer for any team or pick a team each match? No, I don't really think about cricket that way. I always want the best cricket to happen, or the funniest cricket to happen, or the strangest cricket to happen, or the most historical cricket to happen. If Australia win the final, afterwards I'll probably have a feeling of, oh, that's great, I'm Australian, we've won the World Cup, yay. But during the game, I probably won't be even factoring that into how I'm thinking about the game. I think I like cricket a lot more than I like cricket teams. So I wasn't supporting anyone today. Keshav said, a matchup's overrated. Head got 2 right-handers and Maharaj got head off the first ball. Do you know what I love about this? Is if they were overrated, they wouldn't exist. All you were trying to do, Keshav, is try and take a 50-50 situation and make it 55-45, maybe 60-40, maybe in some positions 80-20, right? But essentially, you were trying to take what is a 50-50 situation and put things in your thing. No one ever said that right-handers never get out to off-spin. Otherwise, Ashwin wouldn't exist, right? Nathan Lyon wouldn't exist. We know that they can get them out. But matchups make sense. How can you watch a game where Markram came on as a matchup bowler and did well and not notice that, right? But that doesn't mean the best bowlers in the world are probably going to be pretty good against left hand and right hand. There are very few specialists. But you want to put things in your advantage, and you want to put them, you might be looking at the opposition, you might be looking at the pitch, you might be looking at anything else. Soham says, I can't be the only one to notice that the difference maker in both semi-final matches so far have been the aggressive intent from the openers. Yeah, I think what Rohit did was harder, easier conditions, so easier to score quick than what the Australians did. But if you're chasing 200, you do have, I thought there would be, I thought Warner might come out and just go, if I make 60 off 80 balls, we win this game easily. And they went the other way. And perhaps they did that knowing that how hard it was to score at times for South Africa. And that it might be even harder under the lights. And if they did that, that's really good thinking. But yes, you're right. There's a difference in both. But realistically, the real difference was that South Africa had an opener who did go too hard. And you could put Markram in there as well with his shot. I don't think it was as bad. But those two played overly aggressive shots at the start of the game, which actually brought Australia back into it. So I don't think you can't have it both ways, Soham. You can't have QDK hitting the ball straight up in the air, trying to show intent, and not factor that in when you talk about Rohit and Gill and Head and Warner and what they did. I think both of those things have to be mentioned. Shrikant says, and Super Chat Shrikant, thank you very much. Did Archer's blow take something vibrant out of Smith's game post 2019? So did his mind a subconscious fear of the short ball, evident again today. Look, he's changed the way he plays the short ball. I think I've done a piece on this before, and I am not sure if it was as much Archer as it was Wagner. You have to go back. I did a big video on this, Shrikant, and I can't remember all the details off the top of my head. But my theory was that it wasn't Archer and that it isn't straight after Archer. I think as you get older, you don't play short pitch bowling as well. Your back gets stiffer. It's harder to, you need to be lithe to play a short ball well, to get in and out of the line and to move quickly and everything else. So I think that is certainly a big part of it. What else would I say to this? He didn't go out to a short ball today. He went out to a length ball outside of stump that he played like it was a short ball. Yeah, but I think he's different against the short ball. I think New Zealand were already targeting him against the short ball before Jofra Archer, though. And it's funny. Today, I was sitting next to some of the Cricket 8 guys when we were off air and we were chatting about it. And I said that I would just bowl bounces to Smith here. This was when he was batting with Inglis. And my reasoning behind it is anywhere else you bowl to Smith, unless you've got an advantage with the pitch or the bowler, he can manipulate the strike. What's the one shot that you can't safely manipulate? Pull shot and hook shot, right? That's two shots actually, but that length, right? So a low full pull shot, you can kind of, tap it for one like Rohit Sharma does, or, get on top of it like some players do. But once it gets a little bit higher, it's hard to actually get on top of it. And chances are you will get a top edge or you will get a little bit of glove or something else will happen in it. And I do think that against Smith, it's a good option just because part of his genius is that ability to just get off strike. Okay, you want to get off strike? Fine. We're going to put more risk in that. I think it's worth having a look at. I have run out of super chats, so thank you, Shrikant. I'll take a quick break here and have a look at if there's anything else in the chat. If you're desperate for me to answer anything, please make it a super chat. But if not, I'll have a look at what's there. But thank you to everyone. All these comments, even I know there's so many today, so I don't even think I can get rid of them. But all these comments help this channel and help us grow. So like, subscribe, do all the things that Jared Kimber from the Scoreboard wants you to do. A few years ago, I had a panic attack after ESPN Cricinfo made me their global writer. I'd earned that position, but I also felt like a fraud at the time because I didn't really understand how I wrote. I understand that there was a process and gears and different styles and things, but how it all came together felt a little bit random. And so I began to panic like a golfer with a natural swing, worried one day I'd just end up with the yips. And would my career be over? So I took my writing apart piece by piece until I understood it. And then I figured out I could teach others all the mistakes I had learned. So I started an online course where I tried to make it as cheap as possible so people like me would be able to afford it. It's called Fans with Laptops, and heaps of people from around the world have used it so far, from first-time writers all the way through to professionals trying to improve. I started with a simple plan to make each writer the best they could be. And from the feedback I've received over the years, it seems like the course does that. But after COVID, my career changed. I came to YouTube, started podcasts, wrote emails, and formed a new career on my own going forward. So I now had something else to offer, the multimedia side of things, social media and everything else. Not to mention that I was building everything up as an independent. And so I added all of that to my course. So if you have ever wanted to work in sports as a writer or podcaster or making videos or anything else, Fans with Laptops is the place to start. If you think you qualify as a fan and you have a laptop and you want to work in sport, click on the link. All right, welcome back. Let's see what else we have in the chat. There's a couple here. But now I've got to find them in here. Hey, here we go. Sukant, I think he was answering someone else, but I couldn't find the original message in the time I had. Ayush Sinha, he was answering. Talks about absolutely not moving on from Rassie van der Dussen. The interesting thing is that chances are that Rassie van der Dussen is not going to be playing in the next World Cup. I think he's fantastic and obviously has one of the highest batting averages in ODI cricket. He's probably not going to be playing in the next World Cup, right? So it's an interesting one. Do you keep him around until the Champions Trophy? Fine. I mean, I love what Rassie's been able to do with his career of recent times. DM has said, how is Chapman better than Neesham with the bat? Neesham was spectacular in the Australian game. And I saw someone else say something about Temba Bavuma. I don't care what color he is. He was out of form. Yeah, lots of players are out of form, and then they make runs. Fucker Zaman was in the worst form ever, and then they come back into that. That's why you play that. So just on Mark Chapman and Jimmy Neesham. So you have to understand that there is a big difference in the level of batting between the two of them. That's not to say Jimmy Neesham can't do the number 7 job very well. And in fact, in some ways, he's more suited to the number 7 job than Chapman, right? But you need to know about the overall batting talent. Chapman can come in way earlier and chip the ball around and run between the wickets and be very clever. And he can also hit quite big at the end. It's quite powerful for someone who's not particularly very big. So in T20 internationals, he's got a strike rate of 158, right? Strike rate in all T20s of 141, right? So he can play the role that Neesham does in a different way, and certainly not in the 6-hit way, but certainly score at a very fast level. Oh, wait, I've just done all that wrong, haven't I? It was a wrong way around. I was looking at Neesham's stats. I've clicked on the wrong one. I'll get back to that point in a minute. But again, Chapman scores 135. So he's, what did I say Neesham was? 141. So in T20 cricket, despite the fact that they play different roles, strike rate isn't that much different. But we know that Neesham is a 6-hitter and that Chapman scores his runs for ramps and improvisation, although, as I said, he can whack it a little bit. But here's the difference in their batting talent, right? And why they will feel more confident about Chapman going up the order, and they won't do that with Neesham. So in first-class cricket, Neesham averages 32. Chapman averages 43. That's a professional batter's average. Neesham's is more of an all-rounder's average, right? In List A cricket, Chapman averages 43 again, 43 and a half. And in List A cricket, Neesham averages 33. They are fundamentally, DM, different levels of batting talent. And I think what New Zealand were trying to do is they wanted a little bit of extra balance in case they lost some wickets. They could use Chapman in multiple different roles, whereas Neesham is just there for that one particular role. And another reason I think they didn't think they needed Neesham as much is the combination of Phillips and Mitchell can actually do what Neesham does later in the game anyway. Now, you could say it's a wrong decision. I mean, that's more than fine. And I thought Neesham was really good in the game he played. But I've been asked this question by heaps of Kiwis all the way through. You need to know that at no stage did I think picking either player was a wrong decision. I didn't think Neesham's bowling was ever going to be that important. I didn't think that Chapman would bowl very much just because of Ravindra. I think there are things that Chapman brings that are important to the team, and I think there are, the role clarity that Neesham has was quite important. I just don't think it's a mistake. It's just, how you want your team to line up and maybe where they thought they were weak or anything like that. R says, what about Riley Rousseau? I know spelling is wrong. Is it? I thought that was the right spelling. At 3 or opening the innings. I think again, I don't want to age Riley Rousseau here, but I don't know that he's not already older as well, isn't he? Trying to quickly find his age here. Isn't he into his 30s? Yeah, so he's quite an old player. So why would you replace other older players with another old player? I don't think you would. Whereas R then says, again, same man, I guess Dylan Brevis should be groomed. Look, they've got a bunch of younger players coming through. I think they'll definitely be having a look at them. Champions Trophy makes it a little bit more awkward. I don't think South Africa will take the Champions Trophy all that seriously, just because I don't think they're taking one-day cricket as seriously at the moment. They skipped some games before this World Cup and everything else, but I could be wrong. But I think Dylan Brevis is probably, in this batting lineup and the way they played, he wouldn't have made any sense. But eventually, he's hardly played any List A cricket. They need to get him out on the field. Maybe one way to get him more List A cricket is playing some one-dayers, give themselves a good chance. And even if he just plays, 3 or 4 series over the next 12 to 18 months, then you get a bit of more of an idea of him, and they can make a decision whether he fits into their order further down. Aditya, is it still possible for you to be invested in Australia and watch the game as a fan with your job as an analyst? Or does the invested in fan fade away? The thing is, I think I'm just different than other people in that I'm a fan of cricket first. I happen to be born in a country. And I'm not saying that Australia hasn't shaped different parts of me and everything else. But I was making this joke today. So people were asking me this on Cricket 8 today. I live in Europe now, right? I live in the UK. Within a 5-hour flight of me is like, what, 15, 20 countries? All right. I don't even know. A lot of countries. And yet within a 5-hour flight of Melbourne, I'm only just getting to Perth. Yes, we share a similar language and some similar cultural ideas, but I also share a lot of cultural heritage with New Zealand, which is actually closer to me than Perth is, right? I just find it weird. When I grew up, the most important thing was family, and then it was community, then it was the city that I grew up in, right? And then the state I grew up in was next. Already, Australia is like 5th on that list, right? And it's not to say that there aren't shared beliefs from Hobart to Broome throughout that country, but it's all just nonsense, right? It's all just colonial people drawing things on maps and then old white guys making decisions for most of us, right? For most of us from colonial countries, right? Like, and you follow something like Afghanistan and Pakistan, and you've got the Durand line in the middle of those two countries. So many of the Pakistani cricketers and the Afghanistani cricketers are much more linked than they are to people in their own country. It's disingenuous. And then why are people so patriotic, but they don't care as much about their city? My city means everything to me. I'm much more pro-Melbourne than I am pro-Australia. It's just, we've decided that these things matter. It's an arbitrary thing at the end of the day. Cricket to me is something else. And it does matter to me. And it's been very important in my life. It's the reason I'm married. It's the reason I'm still alive, if we're being honest, right? Like all these different things. Cricket desperately means something to me. Being born on the same island as Dennis Lilly, less so, right? Doesn't mean I don't think Dennis Lilly's fantastic. Doesn't mean I can't understand what Dennis Lilly meant to Australian people at a certain age. Doesn't mean I don't understand what Glenn McGrath and Shane Warne and Ricky Ponting meant to me, right? But I also know that the local cricketers that I grew up with were really important in my development, and that the club cricketers and the league cricketers and the shield cricketers and all these different things. I just find it weird that we suddenly care about those things, but that's just me. Sanjay says, a word of appreciation for Maxwell. His first 3 overs to just 4 runs put them much needed pressure, which translated into head picking up 2-2. It probably did, didn't it? Look, he's a brilliant defensive bowler. In these conditions, it doesn't translate as well in other places, but I think at certain times in T20 cricket, and certainly when there's any assistance for him, I thought he bowled really well. I think, and I was talking about this today on Cricket 8, where he's very good at knowing when not to bowl to people, because in his mind, he's thinking, I'd hit that for 6, I'd hit that for 6, I'd hit that for 6. And so he's very good at putting the ball into spots where it is hard to hit boundaries and sixes. And so you can work him, but it's hard to smash him unless he just gets it wrong. And he's going to get it wrong occasionally. He's not perfect for his action. One reason he bowls around the wicket a lot is to try and fix his bowling action a little bit. He doesn't always get through his hips and all this sort of stuff, all boring technical stuff, but things that matter to him. No, so I certainly thought he bowled very, very well. I thought that Klaasen Miller partnership was fantastic, and the combination of Head and Maxwell certainly played a part in ending that. Bloody Bugger says, "What is Cricket 8? Is it live commentary? No, it's a watch along." So we have people here who are betting traders, who are analysts like me, former cricketers, cricket commentators, presenters, all different things. And what we do is, we've only done it three times now, and we'll do it for the final as well. Is what we do is we talk about the trends within the game. So obviously I'm more talking about analysis and cricket stories and cricket narrative and everything. And then the traders are talking about the gambling. If you were watching today, Bloody Bugger, you would have made some money betting, because Rob was on fire today of just saying, you should bet on this, everyone, and then it would happen. Even myself, I was talking up the fact that at one stage South Africa were 10.5 to 1. And in no way were the odds realistic, because I just didn't think it was going to be an easy chase. And obviously South Africa didn't get along over the line, but those numbers were really, really good in a situation that I didn't think Australia, I think that Marnus and Smith might have been batting together at that point. And I was like, this is not a game that is over. A 2-horse race. I didn't think it was easy to score. I thought Australia were digging themselves into a hole, which I suppose both things ended up coming true. But yeah, Rob had some direct stuff. We also had Jake on today, a few of us. We also played poker. Michelle was on with us as well. Michelle St. Patrick Hewitt. You guys might have seen on the podcast occasion. In fact, Michelle has just walked in just to prove that I'm not. Look, this is a crossover podcast. This is Caribbean Cricket Podcast and Jared Kimber together again at last.
Come in just for 1 second, just to prove to people that there is a crossover going on.
Get out. What? He's talking off mic? What is this amateur hour over here? This is why people don't like him. But yeah, no, it's a really good show. Me and Michelle. Michelle's just been on a couple. I've been on 3 now. But we're doing really well so far. So yeah, if you get a chance, I think it's cricket, the number 8.in or cricket8.com. I think they both work. We broadcast almost all the way through the day as much as possible. Funny stuff. Oh, and during the middle overs, because let's be honest, ODI cricket getting a little dull. We play poker, which I did very well yesterday and absolutely horrendously in the one game I played today. Oh, that went down. Why can't I see this person's name? Ekant says, thanks, Ekant. How did Head get so good? He still has a rough edge game, but seems somehow to find a way to score. I always thought the Head was at his absolute best when he just backed the things he does well, knowing that a ball has his name on it, right? Which is kind of the baseball method, yeah? And he hits with such power, and he can hit boundaries from so many different lengths. And I think it's really, really important that is the case. His ability to hit boundaries off good balls. I did a video, I think it was from the World Test Championship, about one of his shots. And you just see that it's a good ball, and yet it's just a 4 ball to him. And when players are like that, Kevin Peterson was probably another perfect example of that. They're very hard to bowl to. Gurkit says, why didn't Rabada bowl ahead of Janssen at the end? Do you know what? I reckon the issue was that when Inglis first came in, what they should have done is at one end, they should have bowled 2 overs from Coetzee, 2 overs from Rabada, 2 overs from Janssen. And I think what happened was he took a little bit too long to do that and eventually went with Coetzee. And it meant that Rabada hadn't had an extra... it meant that Rabada and I think eventually came on, but Janssen didn't have a chance. And I think if you're a captain, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, I'm going to have to bring on Janssen. I don't know if Janssen will be able to do anything. Also, 2 tail-enders, the extra bounce was also going to factor in. But I think part of it was he just hadn't seen Janssen bowl, and he thought maybe he'd be able to do something special. It was a mistake. But if you're nitpicking at this sort of stuff, he captained well enough to almost defend a total that in no way, even on a pitch that was tough to score on at times and everything else, it should no way have been defendable. What we do at the end of the games is we nitpick one decision and we forget the fact that they weren't even in the game if Bavuma hadn't have brought on what's his name? Hadn't have brought on Markram. Coetzee, he went with, even when he went with Coetzee ahead of Rabada, and as I said, I probably would have mixed and matched a little bit there. So, yeah, those sorts of things. I get it, but it's we pick on these sorts of things in those close games. But could we not have picked on everything that Australia did as well? Like bringing a head on was a mistake. It worked, but 3 balls in, it was a mistake. Keeping Stark on looked like a mistake. You don't remember those because Australia won. No, that's not R. Oh, who have I clicked on here? Oh my God, I can't see the names. They keep disappearing on me. Sutitatha. I probably got that wrong, but sorry. Props to your analysis. Love from India. Well, thank you very much for your support and watching. And here's R. I found him eventually. He says, South Africa needs a sports psychologist. They literally just defended a total. They were 24 for 4, weren't they? And they've taken this game to the 47th over with Australia 3 wickets to go. Are we being serious? I thought they played a fantastic game outside of the fact of Quinton de Kock and Markram probably gave a couple of too many early wickets. And then the Clarkson wicket, maybe he should have been taking Head more seriously. But had you seen Head bowl earlier in the over? You can see why he might not have been. Anyway, that's it from me. I am out. We will probably, we're going to do a live later on as long as I can get home in time as well. So please get in, stick around for that unless you're in a bad time zone, and then you go to sleep. Always sleep ahead of watching me. I think that's the best way of doing it. But we'll be back on, I think, Bayram and I think Estelle might be joining us as well today. So we'll have a look at both of these semi-finals so we can get out a bit of a cathartic view. Cathartic? Is that the right way of putting it? Anyway, we'll be talking about the 2 games of cricket that were played. And have a look at it from that point of view. But thank you to everyone again. So many of you coming in. Chat absolutely bumping. Nothing better than a bumping chat, is there? It's the best kind of chat. And but thanks for your support. And we'll be back again tonight with a different kind of show. And I will certainly do a live, probably on Friday night. Maybe a Q&A show on Friday night, looking ahead to the final as well. But I'm going to need some rest between now and then. I'm going to need a moment.
This video is brought to you by Wicket Cricket Manager. If you're enjoying these live chats, our main channel has even more World Cup videos looking at the greatest performances, the quirkiest stats, and the epic tales of World Cup cricket. This show was made by HCLTech, a company that believes in partnership so much you can read their name on the Australian shirt. This show leans in hard on data and technology, so we are proud to work with HCLTech, leaders in their field.